Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Jamie Cashman with the Iowa State Association of Counties, and we're very pleased with the number of our members that have joined us today for this webinar in regard to reimbursement from the Iowa COVID-19 Local Government Relief Fund, or from the CARES Act dollars that were allocated to Iowa counties. There certainly hasn't been a shortage of questions as a result of this, and so we are very pleased today that we will be hearing from representatives on behalf of the state of Iowa on how counties can be reimbursed for these COVID-19 related expenses. So with that, I'll turn it over to Steve.
Thanks, Jamie, and welcome everybody. My name is Steve Mermelstein, and today, as mentioned, we appreciate you taking some of your time. We know you've got a lot of things going on, whether it's related to this and trying to get your applications going and getting dollars flowing. We know there's obviously been weather to deal with and those types of things as well. So plenty of things going on. Appreciate that. Today, what we're going to cover really, we want to provide you instruction on how to complete the request for reimbursement ultimately. And we're also going to cover some key dates. We'll show you how you can submit questions along the way too. We know that as you get in, and you'll be seeing this, most of you for the first time. So as you're seeing this, we know that you'll have questions later as well. So you'll be able to submit those. We'll show you that. Really today's purpose is additionally those next two items is to just provide a live demonstration. We want to show you how it's actually going to work. There's two key components and we want to make sure you understand that, but the first one is really an Microsoft Excel workbook that you'll download and work through that in its entirety, and then you'll be prepared to actually submit your application, which is a basic online form. We're going to show you all of that today. Time permitting, we'll take questions about the process. We know a lot of you are probably thinking about or may have questions about eligible expenses. Is this allowable? Is this not? I think our intent is not to cover those today. There's going to be there's a lot of those, and there would be a lot of one-off ones that we might have to cover. So we certainly want you to submit your questions. We'll be tracking those. What we're going to intend to do is try to respond to those accordingly, as well as with FAQs. But in many cases, you'll also have that ability to submit questions later as well, so that we can make sure we get those answered for you. Ultimately, that the state will be able to help us provide those responses. In terms of the instructions, this is critical. Just want to make sure you're paying attention, because we don't want you to go in an order that would kind of erase some data for you. So as you think about this, we do want you to look at kind of step one. Really go to show you all these links and download the Excel workbook. You're going to see that there's a handful of pages in there. It's not a 40-page workbook. It's more like 6 or 7 pages. There's full instructions there. And we want you to work through that in its entirety, read all the instructions. Again, there's a great page of instructions there. And then really when you're ready, you'll be filling out that workbook accordingly. You'll be adding your kind of rows to the space that's already there. Again, you're going to get to see all that here in just a few minutes. And gather all that electronic support. So you're going to have to provide not only kind of your justification, but you'll have to provide some supporting documents electronically, and you'll submit all those as part of that application. Once you're ready, then we will show you again today. Then you'll navigate to the intake application at the website. You'll hit that button. There's a few basic questions that it's basically a basic form, but we'll want to make sure that you have the opportunity to upload the documents, one of which of course would be the Excel workbook that you saved on your own and filled out, but then also the supporting documentation. And we'll make sure that you get to see how to do that. You'll hit that submit button ultimately as you fill out that application. You've uploaded your documents. Once you hit submit, you will then get a receipt. Again, you'll see all that. And from there, then the process goes kind of behind the scenes where our team takes it and begins to work with you as needed. We're going to explain a little bit more of that lately. So that's essentially how the process goes. Just as that reminder, focus on the Excel workbook first. Once you've completed it, then you're ready to move on to the application. A few key dates, really September 15th and October 9th are the key dates. So you'll see for these, for the requests for reimbursement with costs that have incurred between March 1 and July 31, Those are due by September 15th. And again, you know, the web page that you'll see is live now, so you could start working on those immediately. The expenses that are occurred between October 1 and September 30 would then need to be submitted by October 9th. And as needed, future periods will be evaluated as applicable. Basically, the information you'll want to go to is here. We show that website. There's great information there about some of the guidelines. You can download the workbook there, and we're going to show you all this in just a minute. You could download the workbook. You'll see the intake application is there, as well as the FAQs. And check back. We encourage you to check back periodically too. Those FAQs are going to keep changing as we do get questions. Then we'll keep updating that FAQ document. Finally, if you have any other inquiries in particular while you're digging in, we've got an email address here. It's kind of that local government relief fund at iowa.gov. You could submit those inquiries there, and we will make sure to triage those for you accordingly. And as those questions are coming in, you know, again, we would try to respond directly where it makes sense, and additionally, some of those questions may translate to the FAQs. So that really concludes our slides initially. I'm going to hand it over to Jen Mountcastle, who's going to start taking us through the live version demo. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm just going to use the link that's right here to go ahead and go to the coronavirus.iowa.gov page. Going ahead and loading, and this covers all of the COVID-19 funds for Iowa. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll down to this section right here. Process for requesting reimbursement of qualified expenses. You can see it kind of does a little bit of a recap of what Steve has just explained to you, as well as those dates. You know, September 15th, October 9th. I do want to point out a key thing right here. Regardless of your fiscal year or of your budget period, the dates are September 15th and October 9th. Costs incurred March 1st through July 31st, and costs incurred August 1st through September 30th. Even if this spans at 2 fiscal years, please, this is March 1st through July 31st. So we're going to scroll down a little bit more, and following the instructions that Steve reviewed, you have your RFR cost summary workbook, your intake application, and your FAQs. Always check back to these FAQs. We are updating them frequently, and you will also find that contact email address at the bottom of these FAQs. But if you go ahead and download this RFR cost summary workbook, it's going to do this pop-up right here, and you're going to want to do a save as, so you can save this down and work on it. And here's the workbook you will be working on. Got a few tabs: the instruction tab, the summary tab, other cost worksheet, labor input, fringe benefits, and labor cost worksheet. The instruction tab is very detailed. If you have any questions, you're probably going to be able to find an answer on this tab, and we're going to go over this hopefully quickly, but hopefully in detail. And please, if you have a question, type it into chat. Up here, you have all of your contact information. That email address again, the information website, the application website, and this is where we go when we fill out our intake application and upload all these documents, as well as an amended application website. So once you apply, you're going to be assigned an analyst, and that analyst is going to work with you throughout the life of your application. And your analyst may need additional documentation or may have questions. When your analyst needs additional documentation, they will reach out to you and ask you to upload it. And this is the website you will go to upload your additional documentation. We've included everything in one place so that there's no scrambling around trying to find where to upload documents. This runs through eligibility, state of Iowa cities and counties for the list located at the information website noted above. Eligible costs CARES Act provides the LGRF payments may only be used to cover costs that are necessary expenditures incurred due to the public health emergency respect to COVID-19. They were not accounted for in the government's entity budget most recently approved as of March 27th, 2020. This is your fiscal year 20 budget, most recently approved as of March 27th, 2020. They were incurred during the period that began on March 1st and ends on December 30th, and have not been reimbursed or where reimbursement has not been requested from another source of funds, including but not limited to other federal programs. These are all very important points because I know there has also been additional questions regarding the FEMA program. So these are things to take into consideration. Instructions on filling out the form. Please read the guidance as issued by the state of Iowa, as well as the recent updates and facts in the website listed above. The guidance is published on that website. Read all of the worksheets in the workbook to familiarize yourself with the eligible expense types and the requested information prior to filling out the worksheets. And we will go through these worksheets with you before we get off the phone. Complete all the yellow fields in the following worksheets of the RFR Cost Summary Workbook. So you'll notice a lot of things here are in green. You are not able to type in the green spots, but if you were to come over, you may type here in any of the yellow. And in this case, this is the name of your local government and your service period of application, and that will carry this over to the rest of your form. And here, you're going to be expected to type in this yellow area. So complete all the yellow fields for the various tabs, and then you're going to want to submit the CARES Act application for the LGRF along with the attachments to the state of Iowa application website noted above. When you are in the website, do not use the back button in the browser to make any changes. Use the website navigation buttons or you will lose data, and we would prefer if you didn't lose data, especially if you've already uploaded a number of documents. If you're responding to a request from additional documentation, as I noted earlier, please upload the documentation at the website noted above labeled Amended Application Website. You will receive a project number once you have submitted your initial application. It will show up on the screen, and it will also be emailed to you. That project number will be assigned to you for the life of your application, and it is what we will use to refer to your application. Submit any questions to the email address listed in the contact information above until you have received your assigned analyst contact information, and then you will work one-on-one with that person. We have noticed it is easier to use Chrome than Internet Explorer. You can use Internet Explorer, it works, it's just easier to use Chrome. Okay, now for some important information regarding labor entry. I'm sure you noticed there's some big yellow lines here. You'll notice there's a lot of yellow boxes here for data entry. And we'll get to labor input and labor entry here. But labor input, fringe benefits, the labor worksheet have been provided as a preferred format. If you have similar Excel reporting documentation, please feel free to upload it and we will review it to determine its appropriateness. Please reach out prior to performing any data entry if you have questions or would like further clarification. Enter employee identifying information and pay rates with corresponding labor fringe benefit percentages. If you are unsure of your labor fringe benefit percentages, please use the fringe benefits tab to calculate prior to filling out the labor input and labor cost worksheets. Columns I through L are only used in the event of a pay rate change. So we have enough space that you can have 4 pay rates per employee on one line. And if you exceed 4 pay rates per that one employee, you will have to add that employee on another line. Request for documentation. Local government fiscal year 20 budget, most recently approved as of March 27th, 2020. I realize that many of you will be using actual data from fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 21, but for the purpose of this initiative, we will be using fiscal year 20 budget information. This is very important. We receive a lot of questions about this. It is only fiscal year 20 budget information. Please include the detail from your fiscal year 20 budget information as related to the level of detail you are requesting reimbursement for. So the budget you submit should agree to the amount of the budget you listed in the yellow box you will see in a minute below. The resolution for eligibility referring to the LGRF guidance. So the local government will need to pass a resolution from the governing body stating that all reimbursements submitted follow the federal and state of Iowa guidance on how the funds should be spent, and that if the funds are misrepresented, the local government will be liable for the repayment to the state of Iowa and any applicable penalty and interest. And that resolution needs to be uploaded with the initial CARES Act application. So for your other cost worksheet, supporting documentation, as well as information, invoice, justification of costs. Example of your justifications include a brief description of the specific activity, specific population or group served, specific programs created or utilized, include any known or intended outcomes, results, community impact. Receiving reports, shipping tickets, date items received, proof of payment if available, or proof of encumbrance. Copies of checks with batch detail, corresponding bank statements, cleared check with endorsements and batch details, or proof of ACH or other electronic payment with batch detail and corresponding bank statements. To clarify batch details, if ACH or check covers multiple expense line items, please include the batch detail and highlight the expense requested for reimbursement. Also, please include a copy of your procurement policy and any supporting documentations as required by your policy. For your labor costs, if you're submitting a request for reimbursement for 25% or less of the fiscal year 20 budgeted public health and safety payroll costs, then please provide the payroll register and please be prepared to provide as an enter the employee name, position, department, and perm or temp status. We need the perm or temp status because the state is going to be reporting on the perm or temp status. If you are submitting a request for reimbursement for more than 25% of your fiscal year 20 budgeted public health safety payroll costs, then please provide the payroll policy for the employees being claimed, the timesheets, the payroll registers, the pay rate support, the activity logs. If you're claiming more than 25% of public health and public safety employees or any amount of other department payroll wages. Also, please be prepared to provide the employee name, the position, the department, and the perm temp status. We've received questions about MOU and the 28E agreements, so please include 28E agreements and the payment encumbrance supports. So this is, I was talking about some fields below. So per state guidance, please enter the fiscal year budgeted payroll figures below for public health and public safety employees in order to calculate the qualifying payroll amount. So that we're just talking about qualifying payroll and public health and public safety. So your payroll costs for the public health and public safety employees in excess of 25% of the fiscal year budget amount may be eligible for reimbursement. However, they will require additional supporting documentation. So let's look at your public health. And we'll say that your budget was approved, the date was 3/15, and the amount was 200,000. The multiplier is 25%, and the amount of periods you're claiming on this RFR is 4. That's telling me that your projected payroll, 25% of your projected payroll is $16,666. And what you're requesting on this RFR is $16,000. You're coming in at under, so you need the lesser burden of documentation. Coming up here, If submitting a reimbursement for 25% or less, you're at less than 16.6, you need your payroll registers, your pay rate support, and you need to supply employee name, position, department, and firm temp status. Let's use this for an example down here with your public safety. Same thing, it's 315, 200,000 for payroll periods. We're talking about payroll periods. Projected payroll is 16.6, and you're requesting 20,000. You've now exceeded that 25% by 33 and 3,300 and change. So you know you are going to need your payroll policy, your timesheets, your payroll registers, your pay rate support, your activity logs, and all this extra small information here. Natalie, would you like to add anything before I move to the next page?
Yes, one other item on here, the amount of periods claimed in this request for reimbursement, that would be the number of months covered. So in this case, as the number 4, that would be March, April, May, and June, for example. You're eligible to do up to 5 in this first submission, but some of you guys might not need to use all 5 of them to get to your maximum allocated amount that the state has provided to you. So it could be 5, it could be 4, it could only be 1 month. It just depends. So the multiplier in there is at 25% times the number of months that you're requesting with this. And then in addition, you'll need to take a look at that public health and public safety numbers in total and see if that number is greater than or less than the number that you're submitting for reimbursement to justify whether or not you need that 25% or more payroll support, or the lesser of the 25% payroll support. So it's in unison. Both of those would be together in terms of which level of support you would be providing in total for this summary section.
It is in unison. I was just using them as 2 separate examples. I apologize, everybody.
Yeah, 2 separate examples work great. And then if you just, for the purposes of when you're actually ready to submit it, you would just be looking at that 16,666.67 for both of them, adding that together to get your 33,000 and change. And then you'd see that you've got 36,000. So you'd be over, in this instance, that 25% threshold. So you would be required to submit the more documentation, if you will. So the higher credentials that are listed above there, beginning on line, let me see, line 72, up above. So you would have to provide, in addition to just the payroll register, pay rate support, you would need a pay policy, those timesheets, and then activity logs, since you're claiming over that 25% budgeted amount. So those are just a couple of key items to keep in the back of your mind when you're completing this portion of the form. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, MC, to go through the summary.
Moving
And
forward.
it does cover benefits, by the way. That was another question we've been getting.
Moving forward, our summary sheet. So our summary sheet requires very little data entry from you. It really is just the name of the local government, the service period of application, beginning date and end date. This simply wraps up all the data that you've entered into the application, looks at the other cost worksheet, labor input, fringe benefits, and labor cost worksheet. It rolls through and it adds up everything on the other cost worksheet that you've assigned to personal protective equipment, sanitizing products, all these different types. This is, you see other cost worksheet here. These are the categories that have been assigned by the state for reporting and how you will assign your expenses. And then it takes whatever the state has assigned for reporting categories and rolls those up into what the federal government has assigned for reporting categories. The only reason you're seeing a total in here right now is because we have an example in for labor for you to review. So personal protective equipment, if you were to look at other cost worksheet, you'll see that there's a personal protective equipment. That would show a total here. You'll also note that if for any reason you did need to print a copy of it, you would be able to print a copy and view it all in one sheet for your reports. Moving on to the other cost worksheet tab, your name, beginning and end date have flowed through. We will go ahead and enter your project number for you once it's been assigned, and you have your instructions back at the top. Please fill out the chart below for all costs unrelated to labor in its entirety for each individual invoice you are claiming with this request for reimbursement. It is important to notice, not only do you have to enter each individual invoice, you will need to provide supporting documentation for each individual invoice. Type of invoice. You will need to look at your categories and assign a category for each invoice you are entering. If the invoice addresses multiple categories, you will need to split that invoice. Sanitizing products. But let's say we picked up from Granger. And I didn't put in a date, so now it's yelling at me. I'm now putting in a date and an invoice number with an amount. I have to add in what date it was received. These are all data validated fields for dates and dollars. What's more is you can't put in a dollar amount without having a type in. You have to put in a description of goods as well as a COVID justification. Why did you purchase this? Hand sanitizer for courtrooms. Was this budgeted? No, this was not budgeted. What was your procurement method? So your procurement method has a pop-up box here: exigency memo, state request, competitive bidding, other. If it was other, we do need you to put in what the other was. We'll put in state request. It also gives you more detailed information here: the COVID justification, provide a brief description, identify specific population, identify specific programs. You know, we come down here if it was an exigency memo, a state memo, a competitive bidding. And here we have to say supporting documentation file name. You are going to upload electronic documents in your intake application. We need to know which electronic document to look for. Here I'll put AP file dated AP file dated 8/19/2020, so I know which document to go and reference when looking for this invoice and its supporting documentation. Remember, go back to your instruction tab. When we're looking at other costs, I need the invoice, I need the receiving report or the shipping ticket, I need the proof of payment if it's available, or the proof of encumbrance. That's the copy of the check with the batch detail, the corresponding bank statement, the cleared check with the endorsement and batch detail, or the proof of ACH. One of these items here to show payment information. All of that will need to be included. So now that I have this $100, and you can see that as I enter lines here, it's going to wrap up into a total at the top so you can keep track of what you're adding in expenses. I'm going to go back and look at my summary tab, and I can see that under sanitizing products, I have $100 on my line item. That $100 has now dropped down into my total for the state of Iowa reporting. And what's more is it's dropped down into my total under personal protective equipment for federal reporting. And my totals are tying. So at this point, I will wrap up the summary and other cost worksheet, and I will turn this over to Natalie for the labor sheets.
Okay, thanks, MC. So the labor input tab is particularly important. And again, just to reiterate what Jen had mentioned earlier in our presentation, that reading the instructions is very, very important. And we have them on the top of these pages too, as well as that instruction sheet, just to kind of hone in on some important key facts. Like she mentioned earlier, you only need to use this labor input tab, fringe benefits tab, and labor cost worksheet tab if you want to use this preferred format for entering in your labor expenses. You are allowed to use other forms or other sort of Excel documents, if you will, to send us your labor information, so long as it houses and covers all of these different rows and columns that we are requesting herein. So if you would like to do that, you can. However, if you would like to use our sheets as provided, you will need to start with this labor input field, and you'll note that we've got a couple of employee examples listed in here already for you. But every single employee that you're going to be requesting reimbursement for would need to be listed out within this sheet on this workbook. So we have an employee 1 and an employee 2 listed as an example. And you type in whichever their names are, their positions, and then when you get to the type field, you're going to see that there's 2 different drop-down options in that type field. There are only 2 because the state of Iowa has determined one to be the temporary emergency staffing and the other to be the payroll cost for the public health and public safety employees. Once you have made those selections, you would go in and enter in the rates, pay 1, pay 2, pay 3, pay 4, at the corresponding benefit rates as appropriate. We have, as she mentioned earlier, 4 different options in case those rates have changed throughout the course of the period for this application. If you need more than those 4 rates for one particular employee, you will need to write that employee's name again on another line. If you need to do that, at the end, you will need to write employee 3 example -1 or something else to identify that the employee name is listed multiple times, so it'll grab the right information off of the columns here. Now, if we switch over to the fringe benefits tab, this is a tab put together if you need to just look at a regular time pay rate and calculate out what the fringe benefits would be in their entirety. And you can use this tab for pay rate 1, pay rate 2, 3, and 4 as many times as you need to in order to get to it. You would just need to print it out and identify which pay rate it would relate to in its entirety, and then resubmit it with your application request herein. It's I said that backwards. If you print these out, one thing we wanted to make note of on the previous tab is if you do hit print, as she was showing you before, there's multiple lines. So if you try to print out the whole thing, it's going to continue to print pages and pages and pages, and you don't want to do that. So you want to make sure that you only print out pages 1 through 3 or whatever pages you have data on, so you're not getting a whole ream of paper wasted with other items not used. So only select that one page if you want to print out the labor input tab or on the labor cost worksheets tab. You go back to workbook. Thanks. So back to the labor, if you go flip over to the next one, the labor cost worksheet, please. All right. So this one is the one that you have to enter in all of your employee data. And if you look in here, there's going to be that drop-down pop for the name. It's going to have every single employee that you put into the system underneath your labor input tab as a selection option. So you would pick that individual employee. Then you will come down to department, stating whether they are a health, a safety, or an other. And this is just an additional layer of tracking that the state wanted us to keep track of for them. So that's why that drop-down box is there for including the other person. Next, you would select which pay rate you wanted it to include and to use during this one line item submission. So if you have multiple pay rates for this employee over the course of the pay periods that you're going to be entering in, you'll need to utilize separate lines. We have 2 of them per employee listed automatically, but if you need another one, feel free to select the additional employee's name again on the next line, and then you can select pay rate 3 or 4 in this particular example to select the additional pay rates that you need if the rates did in fact change over these periods. And all of those hourly rates will pop up automatically in here. So now, if you see we have 3/1/2020 populated for the date inside of column G, row 20, it says 3/1/2020. If you hover over it, this is the first day of the pay period, not individual days. So we're looking at this in terms of a pay period. So if your pay period is the 1st through the 15th, then the 16th through the 30th, the next box would say 3/16 as an example, after the 3/1 box. Then you would add in any of those hours worked for that entire pay period. So it'll probably be something closer to 80 or 70 or some higher detailed numbers in here. As you add in those numbers, you'll see to the right there, your total hours will start to go up, and it'll multiply the hours and the pay rate and the benefit percentage rate in order to get you to a total cost. When you get to that total cost portion, you're going to see at the top here, you've got some totals that are summarizing for you automatically. Those are beginning on line 17. You'll see a total health, a total safety, and then a total other that'll be drawn from the selection you made in terms of the department on the labor input tab. The other totals that you'll see next to them are the total permanent costs or total temporary costs. Those are derived from that payment type that you entered into the labor input screen, where there was only those two options that relate back to the state reporting field. All of the numbers that are input in here at the top will roll back into this summary tab in total. So if we flip back over to the summary tab and scroll down, you'll see that those separate payroll costs for temporary employees and then the payroll costs for the public health and public safety employees would be in there automatically for you and would total. In this particular instance, you would expect that your total request for reimbursement, if this was completed in its entirety, would be the $6,553.70. That would be what we'd expect to see in your total for the reimbursement request as is indicated herein. One item, again, to make note and reference on that we keep getting comments on is those dates back on that labor cost worksheet. Please make sure you note that those are pay periods, not individual days. There's only about 22 rows there, and that's just assuming that the most frequent pay period stream would be on a weekly manner. So we only have those select rows in there to stipulate that it's pay periods only. So just please remember that. So with that, we're going to actually go over to the coronavirus page or to the instructions tab. You can go to either one and submit an application so we can show you what that's going to look like. So if we go back here to the instructions tab and scroll to the top, you'll see there's the information website that you can go back to and submit it, or you can click on the link below that that'll take you directly to the application. Whichever is your preference, it's available in both manners. If you come in here to the application, you'll start with an application, the applicant's name. This will be where you select your specific county. We do know that there are some cities and counties that have the same name. Note that for those, there's been either a city or a county added to the end. So please select the appropriate applicant name. Next, is this your final request? We understand and we anticipate that each county is going to have multiple requests, each of which will have their own project number. When we ask if this is your final request, make sure you select yes or no as appropriate. And keep in mind your allocated dollar amount that was provided by the state of Iowa. That can also be found back on that coronavirus information website. So then we're going to go to the next box and type in our total amount requested for this application. This needs to be numerical field, and that number, the 3655, would agree to whatever number is on your total on your summary sheet if you've chosen to utilize the summary workbook that we have provided in its entirety. If you do not, you will need to add up your other cost worksheet and your labor costs that you've used and provided on a separate worksheet in total to get to that right reimbursement request number. Next, you will type in the local government's address. You will also need your DUNS number and your FEIN number. These fields have to have 9 numeric characters in order to be recognized as appropriate. If you try to enter and get a notification error that will tell you cannot submit because it is not the proper field. So if she were to put in less than 9 characters, it would signal that that's inappropriate and not allowed. Next, she's going to click on this next box down here on the bottom. That is a feature that you need to use to navigate through these fields. You cannot use the browser back or forward button at the top of the page on that top left corner, or you'll lose your information. So after she's putting in this contact info, there's a primary and an alternate. Note that the primary contact information that you put in is the person that we are going to contact if we have questions regarding your submission. And the alternate will be copied on all of those emails as well, if in case that primary is unavailable for a moment. The phone number and email will be required as well. And this is the email that will be utilized when assigning the project number and where your receipt will go. So make sure that these are the correct email addresses, or you will never get your PDF copy, and you'll have to reach out to our local government email address to request a copy to be sent to you. So please make sure that you do have your correct email address and put in there. So when she's done with entering in that, she'll go to the next field. Here's where you will upload your approved resolution. And again, this resolution is only in here per the state's request, and the resolution needs to cover and state that the government has passed this resolution from the governing body stating that all the reimbursements that they are going to be submitting through the state of Iowa follow the federal and state of Iowa guidance on how the funds will be spent. And if they're misrepresented, the local government is liable for the repayment to the state of Iowa, plus any penalties or interest as applicable. So she's showing you here in the background how to upload these files. You can upload one or multiple files within each of them through either using the upload button, dragging and dropping, or browsing through your files. If you need to select more than one file, you can do so as you enter them in by using the upload more button, or by dragging and dropping in more than one at a time. If you select upload and then need to add more and try to re-upload them, and you already have a few in that box, it could erase them if you don't use upload more and use upload by accident. So please make sure that you're either selecting upload more if you have more than one file to upload, or upload if you are finished with your files and want to submit them. Note that each of these sections has a limit of 10 attachments at 250 megabytes each. If you're going to go over that, we've provided a drop-down box below for you to say whether or not you have more than 10 attachments, and if you need additional space to upload. So you can select yes or no here before going on to add in any additional comments that you would like to add in, noting special circumstances or anything else that you want to bring to our attention. You can do so in this comment box, or you can provide a memo and upload it with the rest of your supporting documentation. Again, the supporting documentation you upload, those file names need to correspond with the attachment names that you've given on that other cost worksheet. And then through the labor cost worksheet, you would upload those files stating something to the effect of timesheets, labor, payroll policies, anything like that that would be relative to payroll or to the individual name as appropriate. Next, you have a FEMA reimbursement request certification statement. You have two options here. You either select that you do not meet the project threshold for FEMA, or if you do, you need to affirm that the local government has submitted the reimbursement request to FEMA for eligible items before going to the state of Iowa. And you understand that these expenses cannot be reimbursed by both FEMA and Iowa. So if you submitted a cost to FEMA, you should not be submitting that same cost here to the state of Iowa. After you've made your selection, you will go down to the certification statement. This certification statement says that you are authorized and empowered to verify, execute, and deliver this application on behalf of your local government entity. You have read the application, including all of its attachments, and that they have not been reimbursed elsewhere. And that includes FEMA as well as other federal grant programs, or it could be state programs. In addition, you're also certifying that you have knowledge of all these facts that are stated and that the application information is accurate and contains no misstatements, risks, misrepresentations, or omission of material facts to the best of your knowledge. Next, you will type in your name, title, department, and local government's name to document the certification performed above. And we have this in here just in case the person filling this out is not the same person as who is going to be those primary and alternate applicant contacts that we are going to use going forward. After you have done that, you'll note that there is a field for project number that will be populated after she hits that submit button. So if she goes ahead and hits submit, you're going to get a box that says you've completed this document. As soon as this document has been submitted, it'll say, thank you. Here is your personal project receipt number. In this case, it is number 11. You can either download a PDF here through that link, or you can check your email and you will be emailed this form. This form basically goes over everything that you have submitted in its entirety, shows you the time you submitted it, and if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see that there's a record of that project receipt number. So you can keep track of the period and the project number that's been identified for this particular project and application. This number is particularly useful and helpful because this is how we refer to your application and to your project. And as we mentioned earlier, if you are going to be needing to upload additional information, you are going to have to type in that project number on the amended application form. The amended application form is listed on the instructions tab. Once this amended application form populates, the first box is going to ask for that project number. So as we're waiting for it to come up here, you're gonna enter in the application project number, as well as any other supporting documentation you need, and you're going to have to identify why you're doing this submission. And it could be simply because my analyst had said, you know, that you needed to submit an additional timesheet or pay rate authorization form that might have been omitted previously. So that would go in that description box there. So you copy your project number, add it in so we can tie up what project number is going to be listed here. You say requested by analyst, and then you would just go through the same upload process as before. So again, drag and drop, upload, or use upload more if you need to upload more than what you've dragged and dropped in initially. You have the same option to enter in more than 10 attachments or not. And then you can have another box here to enter in any additional comments if you need to. After that, you would hit submit, and you'll be given a receipt for this one as well. And we will be notified that there has been another application amendment issue that relates to one previously submitted. So after that, I wanted to just take a second to also thank everybody who participated in this pilot program. I know we've taken a lot of your guys' questions, comments, and input, and we've incorporated them into all of these forms and into that Excel workbook that we went through. We know we've gone through quite a lot of information in the time that we've had with you guys today, so there could be some more questions that you guys have over the process, and we welcome those questions and we will address those as appropriate. If you have any questions over eligibility, like we have mentioned before, please use that email address that is on top of the instructions tab, and we will get back to you with those answers after the state has had a chance to look over those and provide their documentation and their answers and responses to those different questions. So I'm going to turn it back over to Jen, who I refer to as MC here, by the way, since I've done it multiple throughout. That's just how we usually converse with each other since there's multiple Jens on our team. So she's going to go through just a couple of common questions that we've had thus far, since we have a few minutes here at the end.
Thank you very much, Natalie, for reviewing all of that. And I second my thanks to Scott and Lee County for all of their input. It was greatly appreciated. And for everybody for setting up this webinar and for all of your patience in attending. I want to hit a couple of these questions here that we've received. And I know we're coming up very close on the hour, and I'm not going to be able to hit quite a few of the questions that you have in the chat box, but I'm going to get a copy of them sent over to us so we can get them sent back out to you. From what I can see, there are a lot of FEMA-related questions, and I've seen quite a few FEMA-related questions. I can say in the actual guidelines, you do need to submit to FEMA first, and then you can submit to this program. You cannot submit to this program what you have already submitted to FEMA because we can't have duplicate submissions. You do not need to wait until FEMA decides to submit here. You can submit one thing to FEMA, and once it's been submitted, you can submit to this program. It's not waiting on a decision from FEMA. And as you saw when Natalie was walking through, there is a 3,300 minimum project requirement with FEMA. If you do not qualify for that minimum project requirement, please certify on the application intake that you did not qualify for that, and then proceed to do your intake application. If you don't qualify for FEMA, that does not apply to you. And hopefully that does help answer some of the questions that you have. So big questions that we get: what information documentation should be submitted to show the payroll expense? Hopefully our presentation covered that, but if not, payroll registers, pay rate support, and in some cases timesheets, payroll guidelines, and other things that we covered. What staff is deemed public safety, what staff is deemed public health. Staff included in your fiscal year 20 budget, public safety and public health line. If you don't have a public safety and public health line, I would encourage you to make a determination and submit, and we will review your submission and determine your eligibility. And as I said, you will have conversations with your analyst. How should payroll associated costs such as payroll taxes and other benefits that are considered part of compensation be treated? Use the fringe benefits worksheet tab because that will help you get all of that calculated. I don't think that this applies to you, but clarification that a city can submit 25% of their expenses related to a 28E. That is a labor expense, and a 28E agreement, as well as the payment and encumbrance support, must be submitted. Common other expense questions. Will there be a broad list of the expenses that can be submitted? You saw some of the category types, so that list of eligible expense categories are included in the request for reimbursement cost summary workbook in that type drop-down list. So please select the best category for your expense. You see that list, go ahead and review it and see where your expense fits in the type and put it there, and then it will be evaluated. What type of facilities upgrades are considered expenses? New doors, ventilation, hands-free soap dispenser. Facilities upgrades related to COVID-19 are considered expenses eligible for reimbursement as long as they fit the remaining criteria listed under the guidelines. Read the guidelines, make sure the dates match, make sure that you have all the appropriate documentation. CARES Act leave expenses recoverable under this program. For example, the wages of an employee who used CARES Act leave for exposure to COVID. That answer is actually going to be published on the FAQ site. That is a popular question right now. Another popular question: can wages for employees in departments that were closed because of proclamations, such as rec centers, be recovered through this program? The short answer is no. This is termed revenue replacement. It is ineligible for reimbursement under the CARES Act. Another chat question that just came in: if county departments can submit versus just having one submission. I need to read that for a second because I'm having a hard time with it. Hold on. Here's another question. Common FEMA questions. We've had many questions about the FEMA submissions, such as how long it will take. There are concerns that the FEMA process moves slowly, as well as what specific items can be reimbursed by FEMA. If FEMA has a specific list of expenses, that would be helpful for us to send out. As far as FEMA specific list of expenses, that would have to be answered by the state of Iowa on the FAQ site. Most FEMA questions have to be answered by the state of Iowa. However, I can say, as far as how quickly FEMA responds does not affect this program. The key thing is that you have to have applied with FEMA. Not that FEMA has to have answered you, just that you have to have applied. And apparently there's a minimum threshold for FEMA, which many cities are telling us they will not meet. Some has told me it's $1,500. Can they submit what would otherwise be a FEMA reimbursable expense for the state system if they're under that threshold? And since this has been put together this morning, actually, we have found that it is $3,300, and yes, you can submit. And so we have gotten questions on how counties can coordinate to submit. And in regards to that, I'm kind of seeing that pop up. I will have to find out. That is, as I will get that put on the FAQs and find out for you. So we have a couple of minutes left, and in that couple of minutes, I do need to find out, Jamie, would you like to say anything? Is there anything that I'm really missing here? I'm trying to scan through the chat, but it's a very small window, and I can't answer a lot of eligibility questions. I can say that if you go to Iowa's COVID page, and I just saw the message that said, Jen, slow down. Sorry about that, guys. If you go to Iowa's COVID-19 response page, all of this is posted. You can get there right now and download it. That's one response. Jamie, what do you have to say?
Yes, well, no, I certainly want to thank your entire team today for the training. We will also have links to the state COVID-19 website with all this information on our website on the COVID-19 section of that at www.iowacounties.org. And so that'll include the link to the state website, the FAQs, and then also if there would be additional questions, that email address, and also a link to this webinar. So really can't thank you all enough for this training today, and then certainly the rest of your team as you guide our members through this entire process. So if you have any time to answer any questions, that would be great. But if not, we certainly are appreciative.
All right, I actually just cut and pasted the chat to see if I can read that a little bit better. County provides law enforcement for cities and is claiming wages for CARES Act. Are cities allowed to claim their contract costs if the county is already claiming wages? That is an eligibility question, so we will get you an answer for that. I am a techie, okay? For everybody who is listening in on this, I am a tech person, so I cannot give you an eligibility question. I was the person behind the equations. Who is considered public safety staff? So what I can tell you is when you built your budget, go ahead and look at who in your budget was considered public safety and public health, and determine from there who should be included in that 25% number for public safety and public health, and that should work. And my clock just rolled to 4 o'clock. So those were the amount of questions I got to, Jamie.
All right. Well, again, thank you very much. And so I know our members have a lot more questions to be addressed specifically on eligibility. So again, as we will be providing links on our website that people can send their emails in, and then also look at the FAQs as well as they look to submit these projects. So again, we want to thank the State of Iowa team for the training today, and we want to thank all of our members for being a part of this today. So thank you all.
Thank you. Have a